Hi, this is Steve Liu again. Today was day 2 of the TCB workshop, full of FCC presentations. I came back home after the social event afterwards, so that's why this video is a little late. There's so much material. I think tonight I was just gonna focus on maybe 2 huge things that I wanted to share a little bit about. Maybe later on a couple videos share some of the other finer details that were shared that I think are still important. But I got things I got to do. Just this week is kind of a special week because of the workshop. I have things to prepare for personally. But let's get right into it. There's 2 major things I want to talk a little bit about. One is this presentation, which was this is about the MPAG, and they're sort of revamping the KDB inquiry system. And I'm just gonna scroll through these because if you just looked at this fresh, you'd be caught off guard. There's new things called ECR, NAG. There's a lot of new acronyms here, new application guidance. There are a lot of questions and answers about this. People are a little bit confused. I think to the FCC it was pretty clear, but I think for someone just on the outside, this was not clear. And I get it. I was trying to digest it, and I actually talked with Jim, who presented it, just to clarify and trying to understand all these different acronyms, where they're coming from. And I think an easy way to understand this is that it's the same exact KDB inquiry system, but instead of everybody just submitting a bunch of KDB inquiries and assigning numbers with subcategories, whatever, on their side, on the FCC side, they're trying to split up the difference between inquiries that are specific technologies that will go towards PAG approvals, maybe a chipset approval for time average or whatever it is. So maybe a technology specific thing that can be applied to a new technology PAG item, or something that's triggered by a KDB publication saying you need to submit a KDB inquiry because of whatever reason, right? And they call that the ECR, whatever that is. And the other thing is just the usual KDB inquiry, just from the lab, just asking for clarification or whatever it might be. I know that's a lot. I thought I can share a diagram that I think helped me to understand this. So just to break this down a little bit, and the first thing I want to talk about is the NAG. I can't remember what he called this, but he called this the new application guidance, right? And the way he described this was the purpose was to provide a level of confidence that the eventual PAG would have a good chance of success, right? So particularly I had to deal with new technologies, things that required a lot of front-end work at the very beginning and here I put 2 green arrows here. The test laboratory and the manufacturer collaborate together to work on the NAG, to talk with the FCC to get clear guidance prior to, in the blue arrows here, to submitting to a PAG or MPAG to facilitate TCB approval, right? So that's NAG. Almost the same thing as a normal KDB inquiry that I know previously, my prior company, that we submitted KDBs, we prepared it, we packaged it up, explained the technology, proposed a test plan, and it was valid for that particular technology. And it's basically the same thing, but it's called NAG. Nothing too different, but I think this helps just to kind of see where that is in the space of general KDB inquiries. And here I put another dotted box here with a KDB inquiry. That's the stuff that we all know and well, right? So the test laboratory can kick that off. Or it could be something manufacturer specific, technology or something like that, but maybe it's not like an NAG level type of technology. So that's something we all well know. sometimes that KDB inquiry needs to get to the TCB so they can review this properly. So that's this side here. And the other thing that Jim mentioned was this ECR. And it's a little confusing because he mentioned if the FCC policy calls for the inquiry or the ECR, then this is where the ECR comes in. But Dana, FCC, really gave a really good word. Instead of saying policy, it's a procedure. So if the FCC procedure in the FCC KDB publication calls for submitting a KDB inquiry, that is an ECR. And people at the workshop asked, well, what is an ECR? Is there going to be a list or something? And they answered yes, there will be a list. So looking forward to that list, because otherwise we have to dig through all the KDBs to understand which ones would trigger ECR, which ones are NAGs or just a normal KDB inquiry. So in my mind, I understood all these new acronyms sort of in this handy diagram here. And I chatted briefly with Jim just to ask me, is this the right understanding? And yeah, and he agreed with that. And it's still a work in progress, I think, for them. But I understand what they're doing. I think it's a step in the right direction to sort of separate out the different KDB inquiries into the different types, namely things that are manufacturer-specific new technologies, NAG, or just general KDB inquiries, could be generated from the lab or manufacturer, or thirdly, ECRs that are relevant to certain KDB publications. And all this coming into the final application, which could be a single PAG, and maybe one NAG triggered the PAG, maybe the certain technology, none of these things went into, but it just triggered a PAG, for example, NI4 or NI5 or whatever. And that's where the TCB processes these things. And the last thing that Jim talked about was this PAG reuse. And I kind of imagine this to be something entirely different, where it's leveraging from a prior TCB approval, a TCB FCC grant, where a PAG was approved, and it serves as a seed to be able to leverage that single prior PAG for a future PAG. And mind you, it's not just any PAG. There's a ton of PAGs according to the PAG list, but there's certain ones from the reuse PAG KDB that are eligible to be used as seeds to proceed towards leveraging for reuse for a FCC grant. Hopefully that was clear. To me, I think that was clear. So that's that one topic. And the second thing that I want to sort of touch upon here was that I was a little surprised, but just still absorbing this was it was the general RF exposure procedures that looked a little, it was normal stuff here. Mobile, portable, something I shared about from the last video. Kind of harmless stuff, things that everyone knows about. Jake already mentioned. And the things talking about this manual, I liked him clarifying that, because a lot of people think you throw in something in the manual and you're warning the user not to use something that's close to the body, but it's intended for close to the body. They clarified that again. Everyone needs that reminder. I'm gonna skip here. It was this proc sensor thing. I think for those of us who have dealt with proximity sensors, we know that proximity sensors are technologies that are placed in these small portable handsets to detect people holding the devices. So if a person holds the device with their hand, it has to protect the user from harmful exposure to the hand, or maybe to the head. There's some detection mechanisms that exist in the front of the phone. So when it goes to a person's ear, it detects it and it cuts the power, or whatever other methodologies it uses. And one of the things that the FCC has found to be something that can be validated is, if you have a proc sensor, how far does a hand have to be to the product in order to trigger the grip sensor? So for example, if the grip sensor is on the bottom of the phone, you put your hand on the phone, I have a phone right here. Got my phone here. Right now by itself, it might be operating at maximum power. But once I approach my hand to the phone, maybe at 3 millimeters or whatever, it knows a person's holding the phone, and it detects it based on the sensor on here, and then it cuts the power to protect my hand, from incident from the local SAR, possible tissue heating. So that's a mechanism very easily verified. You just need something that simulates, a human phantom or human body. You move the device back and forth, and you estimate. You check the power on the device. You have some tools just to measure it, so it shows max power, and then as a lab, this is what you measure in the lab. You bring it closer to the hand or closer to the body, and once it gets past the triggering threshold, then the power cuts down. And once the lab verifies that, and then you pull back out, and the phone goes back to max power, put it back in, things like that. And once you verify that the mechanism works, then you know that the person's protected. So that's something that they are very comfortable with, and that's why there's no issues with the grip sensors. But I think the one thing here that they highlighted here is about motion sensing. So here, the key point here is sensors that are being used to trigger power reduction based on proximity detection must have a measurable triggering distance that can be verified. And it says, example of a sensor that does not meet this requirement, a motion sensor that reduces power if motion is detected. This sensor does not meet the requirement because the motion sensor provides no defined separation distance that can be verified. I know working with prior manufacturers, a lot of manufacturers depended on a mechanism, maybe it's a gyroscope or whatever, altimeter, whatever it might be, to know that if this device is a little bit perturbed, or that a person's holding it, there's a little vibration or whatever it is, it knows a person's holding it and it cuts the power, which kind of makes sense. And on the screen, you can verify that it's actually being reduced. But it's a little bit surprising that FCC kind of came down on this, saying, well, you need something measurable. And a lot of people ask questions, well, what should we do? And the answer is just, well, you got to prepare for that. So that's I think a big challenge in the industry. I think someone else mentioned that there's going to be the standards group is trying to figure out a way to make this something that's measurable, make this something that's validatable, which is something good because I think people are going to depend on that technology. But I thought I'd bring up the second thing that was very a little bit surprising, embedded in this kind of very general type PDF file. But so I think there's a lot of discussions, I'm sure, further ahead that are going to be very interesting about this. But thought I raise these two really big things, and hopefully the diagram for the prior thing was a little bit helpful. I'm sure FCC is going to have a lot of inquiries about this, and they're going to further clarify and navigate the new procedures. But these are all very new things. There's a lot of other updates. I don't have time to do that. I record that right now, but I just want to get that out there, and maybe as I have a little bit of time later on, I can give a little chunks of things from the FCC sessions. But well, thanks for listening, and hope you all have a great rest of the week. And I know this is the last sort of regulatory day at the TCB workshop, but the third day is a lot of other industry presentations. I think would be great, and I don't know if I can cover that better than them. But I thought just to kind of just focus on what the regulators are saying and some things I think are pretty important, especially for a lot of customers I've dealt with, and for the majority of people that I know that would be interested in this. All right, so until next time, Thanks.